When Emma handed me the sleek black invitation to a party, her eyes sparkled with an energy I hadn't seen in months. "It'll be fun," she said, her tone light and persuasive, almost too casual. For weeks, I'd been drowning in deadlines, my world reduced to spreadsheets and endless emails. A night out sounded like a welcome escape, though something about Emma's eagerness unsettled me. She was never one for parties, or so I thought. The evening of the event, she spent hours getting ready, meticulously curling her blonde hair and selecting a dress that hugged her figure in a way that left me breathless. I hadn't seen her this radiant in years. I brushed off my unease as paranoia. Perhaps she just wanted us to reconnect. The party was at a lavish mansion in the hills, the kind of place that felt more like a movie set than someone's home. As we walked in, the bass of the music thrummed through my chest, and the scent of expensive cologne and champagne filled the air. Emma introduced me to people I'd never met, some of whom seemed to know her far too well. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was an outsider in my own marriage. Emma was radiant, her laughter too loud, her smile too wide. When she slipped away to chat with a tall man in a tailored suit, I stayed back, gripping my glass of whiskey, trying to shake off the creeping doubt. "Who's that?" I asked one of the partygoers, nodding toward the man she was speaking to. "That's Derek," the man replied, smirking. "They go way back." His words hit me like a sucker punch, but I swallowed my pride. Emma had always been friendly, I reasoned. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But as the night wore on, the distance between us grew palpable. She flitted from group to group, her laughter echoing like a ghost of the woman I once knew. And I watched from the shadows, feeling more like a stranger with each passing moment. That was when everything began to unravel. The party seemed to pulse with life, but I felt like a ghost drifting through the rooms, invisible and irrelevant. Emma, on the other hand, was the star of the night, moving effortlessly between conversations, her laughter ringing out like a melody. She'd always been charming, but tonight, there was something different, an intensity, a spark I hadn't seen in years. I kept a watchful eye on her as she spoke with Derek. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with a smug confidence that radiated from him like heat. Their conversation was animated, her hand occasionally brushing his arm. My grip tightened around my glass. At first, I tried to convince myself it was innocent. Emma had always been outgoing, a natural conversationalist. But then, I noticed the way Derek leaned in, how her laughter lingered just a bit too long. It wasn't just small talk, it was chemistry. When she caught me looking, her expression didn't falter. Instead, she smiled, a playful, almost mocking smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Having fun?" she asked as she approached me, her tone light, almost teasing. "Sure," I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. "You seem busy." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't respond. Instead, she handed me her empty glass. "Be a darling and get me another drink?" I watched her walk back to Derek before heading to the bar. As I stood there, waiting for the bartender, I replayed the evening in my head. Something was off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. When I returned, she was gone. I scanned the room, my heart pounding. Finally, I spotted her near the balcony, standing far too close to Derek. Their body language was unmistakable, leaning in, heads tilted toward each other. I hesitated, unsure whether to confront her or wait. The rational part of me screamed that I was overreacting, but my gut told me otherwise. A friend of ours, Lisa, sidled up beside me, her expression a mix of pity and discomfort. "Michael," she said softly, "you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Why wouldn't I be?" Lisa glanced toward the balcony, then back at me. "You deserve better," she whispered before disappearing into the crowd. Her words hit like a hammer. Deserve better? What the hell was going on? I stayed rooted in place, my mind racing with possibilities. Every moment of Emma's odd behavior over the past few months came rushing back. The late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the sudden bursts of laughter at texts she wouldn't share. The cracks in our marriage, once barely visible, now seemed like gaping chasms. But I wasn't ready for the truth. Not yet. And so, I stood there, helpless, watching my wife drift further away from me, both literally and metaphorically, as the party carried on around us. The party carried on, but for me, time seemed to slow. The hum of conversation and the beat of the music faded into a dull background noise as I watched Emma and Derek step onto the balcony. I clenched my fists, my mind a storm of anger, fear, and confusion. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to follow, to demand answers, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. I forced myself to move, weaving through the crowd, my heart pounding with each step. As I neared the balcony doors, their muffled laughter drifted toward me, cutting through the haze of my thoughts like shards of glass. I paused, just out of sight, feeling like a coward but desperate to know the truth. Then it happened. Through the sliver of the doorway, I saw Emma lean in, her hand resting lightly on Derek's chest. Their faces were inches apart, their laughter soft and intimate. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him. My heart shattered in that instant. It wasn't a fleeting peck or a moment of drunken recklessness. It was deliberate, passionate, and real. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched in the gut. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to tear my eyes away. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Had I been blind all along? Was I the fool everyone pitied? I wanted to storm in, to pull her away, to demand an explanation, but my body refused to move. All I could do was watch as the woman I'd loved for years betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. When they finally pulled apart, Emma's eyes sparkled with a mix of mischief and satisfaction. She turned her head slightly, and for a split second, I thought she saw me. But she didn't react, no guilt, no shame. She simply laughed and whispered something to Derek that made him smile. I stumbled back into the crowd, the noise of the party hitting me like a wave. My head spun, my chest tight with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I needed air, clarity, anything to make sense of what I'd just witnessed. But before I could retreat, Emma emerged from the balcony, her expression cool and composed, as if nothing had happened. She spotted me instantly and walked over, her lips curling into a faint, almost mocking smile. "You okay?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I stared at her, searching for any sign of remorse, but there was none. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice hollow. "Good," she said, brushing past me. "Enjoy the party." I watched her walk away, my mind reeling. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew. This was someone else entirely, someone I barely recognized. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Whatever game she was playing, I was determined to uncover the truth. I found a quiet corner of the house, away from the blaring music and buzzing conversations, and sank into a leather armchair. My mind was a battlefield, torn between confronting Emma and staying silent. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of her kissing Derek burned in my thoughts, like a scar I couldn't escape. The betrayal felt like a knife lodged deep in my chest, twisting with every breath. Memories of our life together flashed before me. The day we met, our wedding, lazy Sunday mornings spent in bed. How could all of that lead to this moment? I tried to rationalize it, to find an excuse that could somehow make sense. Maybe it was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But no matter how I spun it, the facts remained. She had kissed him, and she had done so without a trace of regret. Anger bubbled to the surface, hot and uncontrollable. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as I fought the urge to march back into the party and demand answers. But beneath the rage was a deeper, more paralyzing emotion. Fear. What if this wasn't just a one-time thing? What if she no longer loved me? The thought sent a cold chill down my spine. I had always prided myself on being strong, dependable, the kind of man who could weather any storm. But this was something I never prepared for. A part of me wanted to leave, to walk out the door and never look back. But another part, the part still clinging to hope, needed to understand why. What had driven her to this? Had I been so blind, so consumed by work and routine, that I'd missed the cracks in our marriage? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our photos. Smiling faces, shared vacations, quiet moments at home. Each image felt like a cruel reminder of what I thought we had. I wanted to smash the phone, to erase the evidence of our so-called happiness, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I sat there, replaying the night in my head, searching for signs I might have missed. Her distant behavior, the late nights, the guarded looks. It was all so obvious now, but I had been too blind or too trusting to see it. Lisa's words echoed in my mind. You deserve better. Did I? Or had I somehow failed Emma, pushed her into the arms of another man? The uncertainty gnawed at me, each unanswered question another weight on my chest. Finally, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to regain composure. I couldn't unravel here, not in the middle of someone else's party. If I was going to get answers, I needed to confront her. But not yet. Not in front of strangers. As I rose from the chair, I made a silent vow. I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful. And when I did, I would decide whether our marriage was worth saving or if it was already beyond repair. The car ride home was suffocating. Emma sat beside me in silence, her face illuminated by the glow of passing streetlights. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of calm that only fueled my frustration. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Finally, as we pulled into the driveway, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Who is he, Emma? I asked, my voice low but trembling with barely restrained anger. She didn't look at me. Instead, she opened the car door and stepped out, as if she hadn't heard a word. I followed her inside, slamming the door behind me. Don't walk away from me. You think I didn't see you? The balcony. The kiss. What the hell was that? Emma turned to face me, her eyes cold, her lips curled into a faint, defiant smirk. So you did see, she said, her tone almost amused. Good. Saves me the trouble of explaining. Her nonchalance was a slap in the face. I took a step closer, my voice rising. Explain? You owe me more than an explanation, Emma. You owe me the truth. She crossed her arms, her demeanor icy. The truth? Fine. The truth is, Michael, you've become a shadow of the man I married. Always working, always distracted. You're so predictable, so safe. I needed more. Her words hit harder than I expected. More, I repeated, my voice breaking. So, you betray me? Humiliate me in front of everyone. Her gaze didn't falter. You've been blind for months, Michael. I'm not the woman you fell in love with, and you're not the man I need anymore. I felt the floor shift beneath me, as if the ground itself was rejecting my weight. You don't get to make that call, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We could have talked, worked through it, but instead you chose to destroy everything we built. Emma shook her head, her expression unreadable. Sometimes things just break, Michael, and sometimes it's better to let them. The room fell silent, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. I searched her face for any sign of remorse, but there was none. She was resolute, a stranger standing where my wife once was. You're a coward, she said finally, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You always were. That's why I kissed Derek. I wanted you to see it, to wake up and realize how far gone we are. Her words were meant to provoke, but instead of igniting my anger, they left me hollow. I realized then that this wasn't just about the kiss or even Derek. This was about something deeper, something broken between us that I hadn't seen or had refused to see. Emma turned and walked toward the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the quiet house. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, she said over her shoulder. Take some time to think about what you really want, Michael, if there's anything left to fight for. And with that, she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the middle of a house that no longer felt like home. The silence of the house was deafening after Emma left. I paced the living room, my thoughts a tangled mess. Her words echoed in my head. Sometimes, things just break. Was that her excuse? Was that all our years together had meant to her? Couldn't sleep that night, Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Derek, her laughter, her kiss. The pain twisted in my chest, a relentless ache that refused to fade. But beneath the pain was a gnawing curiosity, a need to understand how we'd gotten to this point. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. She'd left it behind in her rush, and though it felt wrong, I needed answers. At first, there was nothing, just the usual texts, photos, and social media updates. But then I found a folder hidden beneath layers of apps. Inside were messages, dozens of them between Emma and Derek. Reading them was like pouring salt into an open wound. They were filled with flirtation, secret rendezvous, and shared memories that had no place in our marriage. But what hurt the most were the messages where they talked about me, mocking my routines, my predictability, even my love for Emma. "He doesn't even notice," one message read. "He's so caught up in his own little world," Derek had replied. And then Emma's response, "Sometimes I think he likes being the cuckold. Makes him feel like he's sacrificing something." I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a calculated, ongoing affair. She hadn't just kissed Derek. She'd built a life with him behind my back, while I clung to the illusion of our marriage. But as I sat there, my anger gave way to something else. Clarity. This wasn't just about Emma and Derek. It was about me, about the man I had become, the man she saw as weak and oblivious. I spent hours reflecting on our life together, dissecting every argument, every cold shoulder, every moment I'd brushed off as unimportant. I realized how much I'd taken for granted, how blind I'd been to her growing unhappiness. But I also saw her cruelty, her willingness to destroy me instead of confronting our issues head-on. By the time the sun set, my resolve had hardened. I wasn't going to let her define me as weak, nor was I going to let this betrayal break me. I would confront her again, not with anger, but with strength. And I would decide what came next on my terms. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I reclaimed control of my life, whether Emma was in it or not. That evening, Emma returned home. She entered quietly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor, her posture as poised as ever. I was sitting in the dimly lit living room, waiting. The soft glow of the lamp cast long shadows, giving the room an eerie stillness. She paused when she saw me, her expression unreadable. "I didn't expect you to be up," she said, setting her purse down. I gestured toward the seat across from me. "We need to talk." Emma hesitated but then walked over, her steps deliberate. She sat down, crossing her legs, her calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside me. "I went through your phone," I said flatly, watching her reaction. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't say anything. "I saw the messages," I continued, my voice steady. "Everything. The meetups, the lies, the things you said about me." For a moment, she just stared at me, her face devoid of emotion. Then she sighed, leaning back in her chair. "And? What do you want me to say, Michael? That I'm sorry? That I regret it?" Her indifference stoked the fire inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I want to know why," I said. "Why did you do it? Why didn't you just tell me you were unhappy?" She tilted her head, her eyes cold and calculating. "Because you wouldn't have listened," she said. "You were too busy being the perfect provider, the perfect husband. You never stopped to ask if that's what I wanted." Her words cut deep, but I refused to let them weaken me. "So, instead of talking to me, you chose to humiliate me? You made me the fool, Emma. Do you even realize how cruel that is?" She shrugged. "Maybe it was cruel, but I was tired of pretending. Tired of living a life that didn't feel like mine anymore." I clenched my jaw, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. "And Derek? What's he to you?" She hesitated, and for the first time her mask slipped. There was a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or doubt. "Derek is different," she said softly. "He makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years." Her words were like a dagger, but I refused to let them break me. "And what about me?" I asked. "Was I just a stepping stone? A convenient placeholder until something better came along?" Emma's gaze hardened. "Don't make this about you, Michael. You've always been so focused on your own narrative, your own idea of what our marriage should be. Maybe if you'd paid more attention, we wouldn't be here." Her deflection only fueled my resolve. "No, Emma. You don't get to twist this. You chose to betray me. You chose to destroy what we had." She stood abruptly, her calm facade crumbling. "You think I wanted this?" she snapped. "You think I planned for any of this to happen? I didn't. But it did, and now we're here." The silence that followed was deafening, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Finally, I stood, my voice quiet but firm. "I deserve better than this, Emma. Better than lies and betrayal." She didn't respond. Her eyes locked on mine. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her alone in the dimly lit room. I knew this was far from over, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. Whatever came next, I would face it head-on. The next morning, the house was unervingly quiet. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my thoughts heavy but focused. Last night's confrontation had drained me, yet something inside me had shifted. I was done playing the victim, done letting Emma's betrayal dictate my life. I got up and headed to the kitchen. Emma was already there, sipping coffee at the island, her face unreadable. She glanced up briefly but said nothing, her silence a stark contrast to the storm still raging inside me. "I'm meeting with a lawyer today," I said, breaking the silence. Her eyes flicked to mine, and for the first time, she looked genuinely startled. "A lawyer?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "We need to discuss the future, whether there's even a future for us." Emma set her mug down, her fingers tightening around the handle. "So, that's it? You're just giving up?" I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "You think I'm the one giving up? You checked out of this marriage the moment you kissed Derek? Or maybe long before that?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she looked away, her gaze fixed on the window. "Do whatever you think you need to do, Michael." Her indifference stung, but it also solidified my resolve. I grabbed my keys and left, determined to take control of the situation. The lawyer's office was a stark, sterile space, but the meeting was surprisingly grounding. I laid everything out, from the affair to our shared assets, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of direction. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, assured me that I had options and that I wasn't as powerless as I felt. When I returned home, Emma was gone. A note on the counter read, "Staying with a friend. Don't wait up." Her absence was both a relief and a reminder of how fractured our lives had become. I poured myself a drink and sat in the living room, staring at the shadows cast by the dim light. That's when I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I called my best friend, Jack. We hadn't spoken much lately, my work and marriage taking priority, but I needed someone to talk to, someone who knew me before all of this. Jack answered on the second ring, his voice warm but surprised. "Michael? It's been a while, man. What's going on?" I hesitated for a moment, then told him everything. The party, the kiss, the messages. It all spilled out like a flood. "Jesus, Mike," he said when I finished. "I don't even know what to say. That's messed up." "It is," I agreed, my voice heavy. "I just don't know what to do next." Jack was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're stronger than this, Mike. You've always been the guy who picks himself up, no matter what. Don't let her take that away from you." His words struck a chord. Maybe I had lost myself somewhere along the way, but I wasn't going to stay lost. That night, I made a vow to myself. I would rebuild, piece by piece, even if it meant letting go of the life I thought I wanted. Over the next few days, Emma remained distant, staying out late and returning only to gather more of her belongings. Each time she left, the house felt emptier, but I welcomed the silence. It gave me space to think, to process the web of lies she had spun around me. One evening, I received an unexpected call from Lisa, Emma's friend who had first alerted me at the party. Her voice was hesitant but firm. "Michael, there's something you need to know. Derek's not just some fling. Emma's been planning to leave you for months." The weight of her words hit hard, but they also brought clarity. Lisa went on to explain how Emma had been confiding in her, detailing her dissatisfaction with our marriage and her growing attachment to Derek. "She didn't want to tell you because she knew it would destroy you," Lisa said softly. "But you deserve to know the truth." As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and for the first time I felt like I could see the full picture. Emma wasn't coming back. Not to the marriage, not to the life we had built together. And perhaps that was for the best. The following weeks passed in a blur. I focused on the things that had once given me purpose: my career, my friends, my routine. It was a struggle at first, the absence of Emma in the house a constant reminder of what I had lost. But with each passing day, the pain grew a little less sharp, and the anger faded into something more manageable: acceptance. I filed for divorce, not because I wanted to end everything, but because I knew there was nothing left to save. Emma had made her choice, and no matter how much I had once loved her, I couldn't cling to a past that no longer existed. On the day I signed the papers, there was no sense of victory or relief, only a quiet resignation. It was the final step in a process I hadn't fully understood at the beginning, but one I now knew was necessary for me to move forward. Later that night, I found myself at the old bar I used to frequent with Jack. The familiar hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses were comforting in their normalcy. I ordered a drink and sat by the window, watching the world go by. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel weighed down by the past. There was no bitterness, no anger, just a calm understanding that my life was about to change, and that change was mine to control. It's been months since the divorce was finalized, and things have slowly started to fall into place. I moved into a new apartment, a small but comfortable place, far from the house Emma and I once shared. It doesn't feel like home yet, but there's a strange kind of freedom in its emptiness. The first few weeks were hard. I had moments where I missed the idea of Emma, of the life we used to have. But those moments are fleeting now. I've come to realize that I wasn't mourning the woman she was, but the version of my life I thought I'd have forever. I've reconnected with old friends, and Jack has been a constant support through all of this. He reminds me often that I'm not the same person I was before all this happened, that I'm stronger, more aware of who I am and what I need. A couple of weeks ago, I met someone new. Her name is Sarah, and while it's still early, there's a spark between us that I can't ignore. She's different, not in a way that's better or worse than Emma, but different in a way that feels right. For the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to what's ahead. The past has shaped me, but it doesn't define me. I've learned that I can rebuild, that I can move on from even the most painful of betrayals. Life has a funny way of forcing you to face things you'd rather not. But in doing so, it gives you the opportunity to reinvent yourself, to start fresh, and to find your true path. I'm finally walking that path, and for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of where it leads. Thank you for going on this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the human experience. Sometimes the hardest chapters are the ones that teach us the most.